All right, ready to dive into some kayak stories.
Yeah, these are great.
We've got wildlife encounters,
Hmm.
gear fails, uh, navigational blunders, all those things that make you laugh and cringe all at the same time.
Exactly. And it's funny, but, honestly, these stories are just packed with lessons.
Right. We can all learn.
Sometimes the best way to be a better kayaker is to hear about these mishaps other people have had, right?
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree.
Definitely.
Get ready to laugh, but
Yeah.
also maybe pick up a few tips for your next time out on the water.
Hmm.
All right, let's start with a story that I think perfectly sums up just how unpredictable wildlife can be.
Yeah.
You remember uh, the goose whisperer?
Yeah, yeah.
Sarah's peaceful paddle turned into a scene from a comedy movie when this territorial goose decided she was enemy number one.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
It's like you never know what to expect, right?
Right. And it's a good reminder.
Like, what do you do?
Well, you always want to maintain a safe distance, right? And be aware of how animals behave in the areas that you're kayaking in.
Oh, oh, for sure. For example, like geese, they're known to be very protective of their nests, especially during nesting season.
So what do you do if you find yourself in that situation? You're paddling along and all of a sudden there's a goose, coming at you.
Well, the first thing is
Yeah.
stay calm, right?
Right.
Don't make any sudden movements.
Right.
You don't want them to see that as a threat.
Right. Right.
And if possible, you know, slowly paddle away from the goose's territory.
Mm.
And whatever you do, don't try to feed them.
Yeah. That's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, you don't want them to expect that every time they see a kayak.
Totally.
Right.
It's all about respecting wildlife and just, knowing how to react, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
That story about Sarah and the goose made me think about other wildlife encounters.
Hmm.
Like, the one with Emily and the squirrel stowaway. I mean,
Okay.
just paddling along with your dog, enjoying a nice day, and suddenly...
There's a squirrel in your boat. Yeah, I mean, it just shows you that, nature has a way of throwing us a curveball.
It really does.
You can't plan for everything.
Nope.
Speaking of planning, let's talk about a story that really highlights the importance of checklists.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the vanishing paddle?
Oh, yeah.
Tom learned the hard way what happens when you don't secure your gear properly.
Oh, I can just picture it. Like,
Yes.
he's out there, and he's having a snack break, right?
Mhm.
And then, bam, the paddle goes flying into the river.
Oh, it's the worst.
I bet a lot of people listening can relate to that.
I bet.
It's a mistake we've all probably made at one point or another.
Oh, yeah.
But it really shows you how important it is to have a spare paddle or know what to do if you don't.
Like, have you ever had to improvise like that?
I haven't had to use like a makeshift paddle, but there was this one time where my paddle like snapped in half.
Really?
And I was so thankful that I brought a spare.
Yeah.
But even with a spare, you got to know how to paddle, right?
Yeah. I've always wondered about that. Like, if you don't have a paddle, what do you do?
There are a few things.
Yeah.
You can use your hands as paddles, and that's surprisingly effective in calm water.
Really?
Yeah, or you can
Right.
use a branch or a water bottle or something like that.
Right. Okay.
And if you're in a tandem kayak, you can try steering with just one paddle.
Right. Yeah, I see. I see.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to practice those just in case.
It's good to have a backup plan.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about navigational challenges.
Okay.
Lisa's story, The Invisible Sandbar, is a perfect example of how clear water can be deceiving.
Oh, yeah.
She and her friends were like racing across this lake,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then they hit this underwater obstacle.
And they had no idea it was there.
Yeah, it turned out it was a sandbar.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how important it is to research your route, check the tide charts, and actually learn to read the water conditions.
Yeah.
I've always wondered about that. Like, how do you read the water?
Well, one thing you can look at is the color of the water.
Okay.
So shallower water tends to be lighter, while deeper water is usually darker.
Okay.
You can also look for ripples or changes in the surface that can show you where the depth changes or if there's something under the water.
Gotcha.
And of course, if you're in unfamiliar waters, always good to consult a nautical chart or a guidebook.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really amazing what the water can tell you if you, pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk about a different kind of navigational challenge.
Okay.
This is more about the human element.
Okay.
You remember John and his attempt to conquer a racing kayak,
Oh, yeah.
the navigationally challenged expedition.
That was rough.
Oh, poor John.
He went from confidently paddling his recreational kayak to repeatedly capsizing in that a sleek racing kayak.
It was like watching a comedy routine in slow motion.
It really was.
The whole crowd was cheering him on
Oh, it was great.
every time he flipped over.
Yeah. But it does raise a good point about, knowing your limits.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, those racing kayaks,
Right.
they're designed for speed.
Yeah.
And they require a whole different set of skills
Absolutely.
than, like, a regular kayak.
Right.
Stepping outside your comfort zone is great, but you got to be realistic about what you're capable of.
Right.
And make sure you have the right equipment.
Yeah, if John had just stuck with his regular kayak,
Yeah.
he probably would have a much better time.
Oh, yeah, and a drier one.
Definitely. And speaking of comfort zones,
Mm-hmm.
who could forget Mark's grand entrance in the fashion faux pas,
Oh, my gosh.
showing up to his first group kayak trip
Yeah.
in a kid's superhero wetsuit?
I could just picture the looks on everyone's faces.
I know.
But you know what I loved about that story?
That's that.
It's how he just owned it.
Yeah, he did.
Like, he turned what could have been a really embarrassing situation
Right.
into just a hilarious memory.
He did. He had a great attitude.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that sometimes you just got to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
Embrace the unexpected.
Totally. And speaking of unexpected, let's talk about Dave's accidental environmentalism,
Oh, yeah.
the unintentional river cleanup.
Oh, that's a classic.
He was so sure he'd found a giant fish.
He was so excited.
Yeah, and it turned out to be
Shopping cart.
a shopping cart.
Yeah.
But you know what?
He got it out of the river.
He did. He turned that whole mishap into a positive.
He did, yeah.
He didn't catch the fish of the day,
Nope.
but he definitely earned some karma points.
He did. Good for him.
Just reminds us that even when things don't go as planned,
Right.
you can still find a way to make it positive.
You can. Sometimes you just got to look for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's all about perspective. All right, so let's move on to a story that shows just how important teamwork can be when you're kayaking.
Oh.
In the Great Kayak Swap, the group's quick thinking,
Yeah.
and their willingness to help each other out
Mm-hmm.
turned what could have been a disaster into a really fun experience.
I love that story.
Yeah, it's a great example of how kayaking, especially with a group, really builds a sense of community.
Right.
When someone has a problem,
Everybody chips in.
everyone jumps in to help. It's like a floating support system,
It is, exactly.
ready to assist with everything.
From runaway paddles to
Yeah.
capsized kayaks.
Yeah, and sometimes that support comes from the most unexpected places.
Oh, that's right.
You remember the group who lost their map?
Yeah, the navigationally challenged expedition.
And they got it back
They did.
from a beaver.
A friendly beaver.
A beaver.
Yep, just goes to show nature is full of surprises.
It really is. It's like something out of a storybook.
It is.
But it also highlights the importance of knowing how to navigate, without technology.
That's a good point.
So, what are some basic skills every kayaker should have?
Well, you should definitely learn how to read a map and compass. That's essential.
Right.
And you should have a good understanding of basic water safety and rescue techniques.
Right.
And it's also a good idea to, familiarize yourself with the area you're paddling in.
Yeah.
Know about any potential hazards
Right.
and points of interest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Knowing those basic skills can really help,
Yeah.
especially when you're off the beaten path
Right.
or if your technology fails you.
Definitely.
Going through all these stories,
Mm-hmm.
it's really made me realize that kayaking,
Yeah.
it's so much more than just paddling
Oh, it is.
from point A to point B.
It's about connecting with nature,
Yeah,
challenging yourself, and creating memories
absolutely.
that will last a lifetime.
And having fun.
Oh, absolutely. Gotta have fun.
Speaking of fun,
Yeah.
that story about the squirrel,
The squirrel stowaway.
I mean,
that was a classic.
that image of that squirrel, scrambling all over,
I know, right?
just pure comedy.
It is.
It goes to show, even when you think you're prepared,
Yeah.
nature's always got a way of surprising you.
It does, and sometimes you just gotta laugh it off.
You just got to laugh and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, let's talk about something that came up in a lot of these stories.
Okay.
Gear.
Oh, yeah. Gear's important.
Having the right equipment can really make a difference
It can.
in your whole experience.
And it's not just about having the right gear.
Right.
It's also about knowing how to use it.
Yeah, like a life jacket.
Yeah, exactly. A life jacket is essential.
For sure.
But if you don't know how to wear it properly,
Right.
it's not going to do you much good.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes we focus so much on, getting all the cool gear
Right.
that we forget to actually learn how to use it.
And use it safely.
Yeah, and that goes for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Paddles, kayaks, safety equipment,
Yeah, all of it.
even navigation tools.
Yeah.
Maybe taking some kayaking lessons
That's a great idea.
could make a big difference.
It could, not just for safety,
Yeah.
but for your enjoyment, too.
Certainly.
Learning the proper techniques, rescue skills, navigation tips, all of that can really enhance your experience.
It's like anything else. The more you learn,
Mm-hmm.
the more comfortable you feel.
Right.
And the more confident you are.
And that confidence can lead to more adventures,
Exactly.
more exploration, more memories.
I like that.
Yeah.
And speaking of memories,
Yeah.
it's about time we wrap up our deep dives into these hilarious kayaking mishaps.
I know time flies when you're having fun.
It really does.
We've laughed, we've learned,
Mhm.
and hopefully we've inspired you to embrace the unexpected.
Yeah, on your next paddling adventure.
Exactly.
So, as we're wrapping up here,
Mm-hmm.
what are some key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind? I think the biggest thing is kayaking is an adventure,
Oh, yeah.
and it's full of surprises. And those surprises, they can be hilarious.
Mm.
They can teach you something. And sometimes they can even be a little scary.
True.
Right. But the key is to just, I don't know, approach it all with a good attitude and a sense of humor, and be prepared as much as you can
Yeah, absolutely.
before you go out there.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you have the right gear, know where you're going,
Right.
and be aware of anything that could be dangerous.
Yeah.
And, most importantly, be ready to laugh when things don't go according to plan.
Oh, for sure. Because they won't.
Right.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah, that's part of what makes it so unpredictable.
Right.
It's really how you react to those unexpected moments that matters.
Exactly.
Turn those mishaps into memories.
Yes.
And another thing I noticed from these stories
Mm-hmm.
is that sense of community in kayaking.
Oh,
Whether you're paddling with friends
right.
or helping someone you don't even know,
You're all in it together.
there's just a feeling of camaraderie. That comes from sharing those experiences. And sometimes
it even extends to the animal kingdom.
that's right, like the beaver
The helpful beaver.
who returned the map.
Yeah, what are the odds?
It's those little moments that make you appreciate nature.
They really do.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive
Yeah, I think so too.
into all these crazy kayaking stories.
We've had some good laughs.
We have, and hopefully we've inspired everyone
To get out there.
to embrace the unexpected.
Yeah.
So before we go, what's one last piece of advice you would give to our listeners?
I would say approach kayaking with a sense of adventure. Be open to learning new things. And most importantly, don't forget to smile.
Yeah.
Whether you're paddling for miles or just floating around,
Yeah.
it's the journey that matters, right?
That's cool.
And who knows, maybe your next mishap will become the next kayaking legend.
I love it. Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and happy paddling, everyone.